April 2025. A Virginia-class submarine slips beneath the Atlantic for a 90-day patrol. The vessel is 377 feet long, but most of that is reactor, propulsion, weapons, and machinery. The habitable space for 140 sailors is shockingly small, like living inside a school bus with your extended family for 3 months. Among those 140 sailors are 12 women. They will eat, sleep, and work within arm's reach of over 100 men. No internet, no phone calls, no escape. How do they make it work? Physical engineering, institutional ritual, and cultural discipline turn a steel tube into a functional society. This is how women survive months underwater with hundreds of men, and why the system that makes it possible was already there. Submarines are hydrodynamic tubes optimized for one thing: mission capability. A Virginia-class attack submarine stretches 377 feet. An Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine is 560 feet. Those dimensions sound substantial until you realize that the vast majority of that volume is filled with machinery, weapons, and the nuclear reactor that powers everything. What's left for the crew is a series of cramped compartments connected by passageways so narrow that sailors must turn sideways to let someone pass, a maneuver they call the submarine shuffle. The main passageway running the length of the boat is nicknamed the racetrack because there's constant traffic, sailors moving to and from watch stations, the mess deck, their sleeping racks, and the heads. You are never alone. You are never more than a few feet away from another person. The sleeping quarters consist of racks, bunks stacked 3 high, each one roughly 6 feet long, 2.5 feet wide, and 2.5 feet tall. Sailors describe them as coffin racks. You have just enough room to roll over. This is your only personal space. 20 cubic feet, plus a small stowage locker for your belongings. Sailors personalize their racks with photos of family, a laptop for watching movies, and books. The curtain that closes off the rack is the only real boundary you have. Closing it signals "do not disturb," and that signal is universally respected. Every space on the submarine multitasks. The mess deck serves as a dining room, movie theater, study hall for qualifications, training room, and chapel. The torpedo room doubles as a makeshift gym or storage area. There is no such thing as personal territory outside your rack. The operational rhythm is relentless. Most U.S. submarines run on an 18-hour day, divided into 3 6-hour watch sections. A sailor stands watch for 6 hours, then has 12 hours off. But those 12 hours aren't free time. They're consumed by equipment maintenance, constant drills for firefighting and flooding, studying to earn qualifications, eating, and trying to get 6 or 7 hours of sleep. This cycle disorients the natural circadian rhythm, but it ensures the submarine is always operational. For women, this schedule is identical to the men's. The job dictates the day, not gender. This is the environment women entered. Integrating women into submarines required physical redesign, and submarines don't have extra space. Every square inch is already allocated. Adding female berthing meant converting existing space, a zero-sum game. Enlisted women are assigned to 9-person bunk rooms, 3 stacks of 3 racks. These rooms are retrofitted from spaces that previously served other functions. Former junior officer staterooms, converted storage areas. A sign outside the door designates it as female berthing. The door locks from the inside. This is the only gender-segregated private space on the entire vessel. Female officers share 2 or 3-person staterooms with other female officers. These rooms are marginally larger than enlisted racks, but still incredibly compact, containing a small desk, a sink, and lockers. The senior-most woman might have her own stateroom, but that's rare. Before integration, submarines commonly used a practice called hot racking. 3 sailors on different watch schedules would share 2 racks, rotating through them as shifts changed. This saved space and maximized efficiency. For integrated berthing, the Navy phased out hot racking. Every woman is assigned her own rack. This decision costs efficiency, fewer sailors per square foot, but it ensures stability and a guaranteed private space. Sanitation facilities presented another challenge. Submarines were refitted to include designated female heads. On smaller submarines, this might mean a single head for all enlisted women. On larger boats, there may be more than one. Some heads operate on a shared use system controlled by a reversible sign on the door that reads male on one side and female on the other. When a woman enters, she flips the sign to female and no one else can enter. The system relies entirely on crew discipline and respect for procedure. Water is a precious resource on a submarine, and waste management is a complex engineering task. All submariners, regardless of gender, follow strict rules of water conservation. Showers are military style. Get wet, turn off the water, lather up, rinse off. A typical shower lasts no more than 2 or 3 minutes. Laundry facilities are extremely limited. 1 or 2 machines for the entire crew, operating on a tight, rotating schedule. The curtain on the rack remains the ultimate boundary. It's the only space where a sailor has control, where the world can be shut out for a few hours. Outside that curtain, everything is shared, everything is proximity forced, and coexistence depends on something other than physical separation. Submarine culture has always been built on one principle. Competence is the only currency that matters. In an environment where a single mistake can flood a compartment, poison the air, or compromise the reactor, there is no room for doubt about whether someone knows their job. The mechanism that enforces this standard is the Dolphin qualification. Earning your dolphins, the submarine warfare insignia, takes up to a year. It requires demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of every major system on the boat: the nuclear reactor, the sonar arrays, the plumbing, the electrical distribution, the torpedoes, the life support systems. You must be able to trace fluid lines through the ship. You must understand how steam moves from the reactor to the turbines. You must know how to respond to any major emergency in any compartment: fire, flooding, loss of propulsion, toxic gas release. The entire crew evaluates you throughout this process. You carry a qualification book, and every system you need to learn requires you to find a qualified sailor who will walk you through it, quiz you, and sign off on your knowledge. This means seeking out the most experienced people on the boat: chiefs, senior petty officers, and proving to them that you understand not just the basics, but the nuances. Why does this valve close before that one? What happens if the backup system fails? Where is the manual override? This process is deliberately grueling. It's designed to be. Submarine culture demands that every person who wears dolphins has earned them through demonstrated competence under the scrutiny of the entire crew. Once you complete your qualifications, you are a submariner. Your identity shifts. You are no longer that female sailor. You are the sonar technician who knows her job. You are the machinist's mate who can troubleshoot the reactor coolant system. You are the navigation electronics technician who can fix the inertial navigation system at 3 in the morning. This shared ordeal is the same for everyone, which is why it works as an integration mechanism. Skepticism about whether women belong on submarines dissolves when the skeptics themselves have tested those women and watched them prove their competence in a trial that everyone respects because they survived it too. The Dolphin qualification doesn't care about gender. It cares whether you can save the boat. True privacy on a submarine doesn't exist. You are never alone. You are never more than a few feet from another person. Coexistence in this environment requires a recalibration of boundaries, and that recalibration is cultural, not physical. Submariners call it the professional bubble. Conversations in mixed-gender settings are almost always work-focused. When they're not, they stay neutral. Movies, sports, qualification progress, where you're from, what you did before the Navy. Personal topics are avoided. Romantic or sexual topics are completely off limits. This creates a psychological buffer that allows men and women to work in extreme proximity without awkwardness. The Navy enforces this with zero-tolerance policies on fraternization, harassment, and inappropriate relationships. The consequences are severe: removal from the submarine service, loss of rank, and possible discharge. These aren't just rules, they're survival mechanisms for crew cohesion. A relationship that goes wrong can fracture the trust that holds the crew together, and on a submarine, that trust is everything. An informal, no-touch rule governs most interactions. Submariners are careful about physical contact. A hand on a shoulder during a tense moment is acceptable. Anything more intimate is not. The boundaries are unspoken but universally understood. The mess deck is the social heart of the submarine. It's a small, cramped space where the entire crew congregates to eat. Navy lore holds that submariners get the best food in the military, and this is largely true. With sailors working in a high-stress, isolated environment, good food is one of the most effective tools for maintaining morale. Meals are frequent and varied. Snacks are always available. The mess deck is also a neutral ground. Sailors eat at long tables, shoulder to shoulder, from the most junior sailor to the commanding officer. This forced proximity breaks down barriers and encourages conversation, but the tone remains professional or lighthearted. Rank temporarily dissolves during meals, but so does gender. You're just another shipmate at the table. Dark humor is the universal coping mechanism. Submariners have a sarcastic, often absurd sense of humor that helps them process the stress, monotony, and absurdity of life in a steel tube under the ocean. This humor transcends gender. It's a bonding tool, a pressure release valve, and a way of acknowledging the shared insanity of the situation without taking it too seriously. The professional bubble isn't natural privacy. It's a psychological accommodation engineered through discipline because the alternative, social breakdown in a confined space, is unacceptable. Every U.S. submarine has an independent duty corpsman known as Doc. Doc is the sole medical provider for the entire crew. Doc is not a doctor. Doc is a highly trained enlisted sailor who can handle everything from stitching a laceration to diagnosing appendicitis to managing a mental health crisis. For submarines with integrated crews, the independent duty corpsman receives additional training in gynecology and female-specific health issues. The medical kit is stocked with a wider range of supplies: contraceptives, pregnancy tests, treatments for common female health concerns. Doc must be prepared to handle anything because there is no backup. There is no specialist to call. There is no emergency room down the street. Pregnancy is a disqualifying condition for submarine service. Women are tested before deployment. This is not negotiable. The submarine environment is filled with potential hazards, and a medical evacuation is an extreme, mission-compromising measure. Evacuating a crew member requires the submarine to surface, often in a location that reveals its position, and to rendezvous with another vessel or aircraft. This can abort the mission. Medical evacuations are reserved for the most dire, life-threatening circumstances. Doc is also the primary resource for mental health. Submariners live in an environment of prolonged confinement, isolation, and relentless operational pressure. Depression and anxiety are real risks. Doc is trained to recognize the signs and intervene early. There is no therapist on board. There is no psychiatric ward. There is Doc and there is the crew. Simple logistics become critical. The supply officer must ensure that the boat is stocked with an adequate supply of female-specific hygiene products to last the entire patrol. There is no opportunity to resupply. If something runs out, it's gone. Uniforms and safety equipment present their own challenges. Many items were originally designed for male bodies. Ill-fitting gear is more than uncomfortable. It can be a safety hazard. A helmet that doesn't fit properly can impair hearing or vision. A harness that doesn't adjust correctly can fail in an emergency. Progress has been made, but the supply chain is still catching up. Biology meets mission constraints in a no-exit environment. The system adapts, but the adaptations are pragmatic, not ideal. The first women to serve on submarines experienced what is known as the fishbowl effect. They were under constant, intense scrutiny from their male counterparts, from command leadership, from the wider Navy, and from the public. Every success was magnified. Every mistake was magnified. They carried the weight of representing all women, of proving that integration could work, of justifying their presence to people who doubted it. That pressure was relentless. A mistake that would be forgiven or overlooked for a male sailor could become a referendum on whether women belonged at all. The stakes were never just individual, they were collective. As more women joined the submarine force, that pressure began to ease. The increased numbers diluted individual visibility. One woman's mistake was no longer a statement about all women. One woman's success was no longer an anomaly. Women began earning their dolphins, qualifying for senior positions, leading departments, and eventually commanding their own submarines. Their presence became normal, but women still report a subtle, persistent pressure to outperform their male peers. It's not official policy. It's not written down. It's a residual cultural expectation, a lingering need to prove themselves in a space that was not built for them and where they remain a minority. The ultimate goal, as stated by many female submariners, is to reach a point where they are not seen as women on a submarine, but simply as submariners. The paradox of integration is that success doesn't look like recognition. It looks like invisibility. It looks like a day when gender is as unremarkable as hair color or height. Just another trait that doesn't matter when the alarm sounds and the crew rushes to contain a flooding casualty. Integration is fundamentally complete. Women are not just surviving, they are succeeding. They are defining the future of the silent service. What remains is refinement, growing the numbers, deepening the normalcy, waiting for the cultural shift to fully settle into the bones of the institution. The system that makes coexistence possible was already there. Submarine culture already valued competence above all else. It already had the dolphin qualification to test and prove that competence. It already had the professional discipline to maintain boundaries in a space with no natural privacy. Women didn't change the system. They proved that the system works regardless of gender. The goal was never to make women visible. It was to make them disappear into the crew, where they belong. 90 days after diving beneath the Atlantic, a Virginia-class submarine surfaces. Its crew, 12 of them women, steps into daylight after 3 months below. They didn't succeed because standards were lowered, but because the submarine force already runs on one rule: perform when it matters most. The real success wasn't in redesigned spaces, but in a culture that forges trust, demands competence, and turns strangers into shipmates. These women aren't redefining the silent service. They're proving it works. The steel hull doesn't care about gender, only that you know your job, trust your crew, and act when the alarm sounds at 3 a.m.